Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. Just saying his name conjures images of tanks clashing across the scorching sands of North Africa. This wasn't a man who sat behind a desk, shuffling papers. Rommel was a soldier's soldier. He led from the front, earning the respect of his men and the fear of his enemies. But how did this unassuming German officer earn such a legendary nickname? It wasn't handed to him. Rommel earned it through sheer tactical brilliance and daring maneuvers. The North African campaign was his canvas, and he painted a masterpiece of military strategy. He was a master of deception, using inflatable tanks and clever camouflage to fool the enemy. He knew the desert like the back of his hand, exploiting its vastness to outflank and outmaneuver his opponents. The British, initially dismissive, learned to respect the Desert Fox. He was a constant thorn in their side, a wily adversary who always seemed to be one step ahead. His name became synonymous with cunning, audacity, and the unforgiving nature of desert warfare. You can't talk about Rommel the Desert Fox without going back to his roots. World War I, a brutal and bloody affair, was where this future legend cut his teeth in combat. He wasn't some general's son with a silver spoon, mind you. Rommel was a middle-class lad who chose a military career, and boy did he learn quickly. He saw action in France, Romania, and Italy. This wasn't some cushy posting. He was in the trenches, facing artillery barrages and machine gun fire. What set Rommel apart was his knack for leading men in the thick of it. He wasn't content barking orders from some safe distance. He was right there with his troops, leading by example. He earned the Iron Cross, first class, not for tea-making skills, but for bravery and quick thinking. World War I was a crash course in modern warfare, and Rommel was a top student. He learned the importance of mobility, flanking maneuvers, and exploiting enemy weaknesses. These lessons would be vital later on. Now, let's talk Blitzkrieg. This wasn't some gentle Sunday drive, it was a lightning war. A devastating combination of tanks, aircraft, and motorized infantry. The Germans, under people like Heinz Guderian, perfected this tactic. Rommel, being the quick learner he was, saw the potential of Blitzkrieg. But he didn't just copy-paste what others were doing. He added his own twist. Rommel understood that speed was nothing without decisiveness. He pushed his units hard, sometimes even beyond what the high command thought possible. He took risks, exploited gaps, and kept the enemy constantly off balance. It was like watching a boxer who never lets his opponent catch their breath. The invasion of France in 1940 showcased Rommel's adaptation of Blitzkrieg. He led the 7th Panzer Division, earning the nickname the Ghost Division for their speed and surprise. He was everywhere at once, it seemed, outmaneuvering and outfighting the enemy. The North African Campaign, a vast, unforgiving landscape that became the stage for Rommel's most famous exploits. He was sent there in 1941 to prop up the struggling Italian forces. What started as a sideshow became a main event. Rommel, with his limited resources, ran rings around the British. He captured Tobruk, a key port, and pushed deep into Egypt. He used the desert like a weapon, outmaneuvering and outsmarting his opponents time and again. But here's the thing about Rommel. He was a brilliant tactician, but not always a strategic genius. He had a habit of overextending his supply lines, leaving his forces vulnerable. The battles of El Alamein were turning points. Rommel was defeated, his forces depleted. The tide was turning against the Axis powers. He was eventually forced to retreat, his Africa Corps a shadow of its former self. Section 5. A Tactical Mastermind. Rommel's Innovations in Tank Warfare. Now, let's talk tanks. Rommel wasn't just a commander, he was a pioneer in tank warfare. He understood the importance of these steel beasts in desert fighting. He knew how to use their speed, firepower, and mobility to devastating effect. One of his key innovations was the use of combined arms tactics. He didn't just send tanks in a straight line like some commanders, he integrated them with infantry, artillery, and air support. Rommel also stressed the importance of maintaining momentum. He hated static defenses. He wanted his tanks to be on the move, flanking the enemy, hitting them hard, and then disappearing into the desert. His tactics were revolutionary and they influenced tank warfare long after the war ended. Even his opponents like British General Bernard Montgomery recognized Rommel's genius in this area. Section 6. Leading from the front, Rommel's hands-on approach. Rommel wasn't the type of general who sat back at headquarters sipping tea and studying maps. He was a hands-on leader who liked to be in the thick of the action. He He wanted to see the battlefield for himself, to feel the pulse of the fight. He often drove his command vehicle right up to the front lines, exposing himself to enemy fire. His soldiers saw him as one of their own, sharing their dangers and hardships. This earned him their respect and loyalty. Rommel believed in leading by example. He expected his officers to be as courageous and dedicated as he was. He wanted them to inspire their men, not just order them around. This hands-on approach had its downsides, of course. It made Rommel vulnerable, and it could sometimes lead to tactical blunders. But there's no doubt that it was a key factor in his success as a military leader. Section 7. A Respectful Enemy, Rommel's Chivalry and the War Without Hate. Now, war is a brutal business, right? But even in the heat of battle, Rommel had this reputation for chivalry. He treated prisoners of war fairly, even earning praise from the enemy. He saw the soldiers on the other side not as monsters but as men fighting for their countries. There's this famous story about Rommel refusing to execute captured British commandos. Hitler's orders were clear. Commandos were to be shot on sight. But Rommel, disgusted by this order, disobeyed. He saw it as an inhumane act. This war without hate, as it was sometimes called, wasn't just about being nice. Rommel understood that treating prisoners well could pay off. It could encourage surrenders, reduce resistance, and make the whole messy business of war a little less barbaric. Of course, let's not forget that he was fighting for the Nazis. But even amidst the horrors of that war, Rommel's actions stand out as a testament to his character. Section 8. The Shadow of Defeat, Rommel's later campaigns. After the North African campaign, things took a turn for the worse for Rommel. The tide of the war was turning, and even his tactical genius couldn't stem the tide. He was put in charge of defending France against the inevitable Allied invasion. But by then, the Allies had air superiority. They bombed the heck out of German infrastructure and supply lines. Rommel knew the invasion was coming, but he didn't know where or when. He tried to fortify the French coastline, building the infamous Atlantic Wall, but it wasn't enough. The Allies landed in Normandy, and despite Rommel's best efforts, the German defenses crumbled. He was wounded during the fighting and forced to withdraw. The Desert Fox, once seemingly invincible, was now on the run, his legend tarnished by defeat. Section 9. A Tragic End, Loyalty and Its Price. The final chapter of Rommel's story is a tragic one. He was implicated in the July 20th plot to assassinate Hitler. Whether he was directly involved is still debated by historians. But one thing's for sure, he was disillusioned with Hitler and the Nazi regime. He saw the war was lost, and he knew the cost of continuing would be catastrophic for Germany. But his loyalty to his country, his sense of duty, was deeply ingrained. He was given a choice face trial for treason, which would mean certain death for him and likely reprisals against his family, or take his own life. Rommel, the soldier, chose what he saw as the honorable way out. On October 14, 1944, he swallowed a cyanide pill and died. He was given a state funeral, hailed as a hero by the Nazi propaganda machine. But his death was a tragic end to a complex and contradictory life. Section 10. The Legacy of the Desert Fox, Military Genius and Moral Complexity. So, what's the verdict on Rommel? Military genius? No doubt. He was a master tactician, a brilliant innovator, and a charismatic leader. He earned the respect of his men and the grudging admiration of his enemies. But he was also a product of his time, serving a brutal regime. His story is a reminder that history is rarely black and white. It's full of shades of gray, of individuals caught in the maelstrom of events larger than themselves. Rommel's legacy is complex. He was a skilled soldier, a flawed hero, and a tragic figure. He was the Desert Fox, cunning, daring, and ultimately defeated. But his impact on military thinking and his enduring legend continue to fascinate and inspire us today. Section 11. Rommel's enduring impact, lessons for modern warfare. Even today, long after the tanks have fallen silent, Rommel's legacy lives on. Military strategists still study his campaigns, analyzing his tactics and trying to decipher the secrets of his success. What can we learn from the Desert Fox? For starters, the importance of speed, surprise, and decisiveness in battle. Rommel understood that warfare was evolving, and that those who clung to outdated doctrines would be left behind. He also showed the value of leading from the front, of inspiring troops through personal example. and his emphasis on combined arms warfare, integrating different units to achieve a common objective, remains a cornerstone of modern military doctrine. Rommel's story is a reminder that even in the chaos of war, individual brilliance can shine through. He was a flawed hero, but a hero nonetheless. And his legacy continues to shape the way we think about warfare in the 21st century.